It's Monday, the 12th of February. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel. And on Wednesday, the 7th of February, a Hawker 900 XP jet went nearly straight in shortly after takeoff from Colorado's Grand Junction Airport from an altitude of 20,000 feet in what appears to be a failed post-maintenance test flight. Here's what we know so far. Starting with the Aviation Safety Network, Wednesday, 7 February, a Hawker 900 XP from VC Aviation, November 900 Victor Alpha. 2 fatalities, 2 occupants on board. The Hawker 900 XP, November 900 Victor Alpha, was destroyed when it impacted terrain near Loma, Colorado. Both pilots were killed. ADS-B data suggests the aircraft took off from Grand Junction Airport. The last data point was recorded at 1747 Zulu with the aircraft at a high rate of descent, about 46 kilometers west-northwest of Grand Junction. Looking at the ADS-B data from ADS-B Exchange, looks like the aircraft departed runway 11 at Colorado's Grand Junction Airport, did a right downwind departure, climbed quickly to 20,000 feet, and then began slowing down the aircraft for what is presumed to be a maintenance test of the stall warning system, reaching about 166 knots down to 164 knots. The rate of descent picks up from 2,000 feet per minute to 7,000 feet per minute to nearly 10,000 feet per minute. That's the geometric rate based off of this ADS-B data, and then begins what appears to be a series of spirals, possibly indicating a spin of the aircraft, keeping in mind that the terrain in the area here is about 5,000 feet MSL. If we export the KML data into Google Earth, we get a profile that looks like this. If we're looking at the inside of the turn here, a very quick descent from 20,000 feet. The leading edge of the Hawker 900 jet is a solid leading edge. There are no leading edge, retractable leading edge slats on the 900 XP. Also on the leading edge is a anti-icing system known as TKS. It's a wing weeping anti-icing system on the leading edge of the aircraft, and often this system requires maintenance. When maintenance is done on the TKS system, sometimes it requires a complete removal of the entire leading edge of the aircraft along this row of screws here. Anytime you have this level of work done on the leading edge of the wing of these jets, often a stall test is required following the work. Note too, there's also a stall strip located right down here on the leading edge of the wing. Here's an excerpt from the Hawker Structural Repair Manual describing when you've got to do a stall test of the aircraft. Anytime the leading edge assembly was removed as a whole for any reason, if 2 or more of the TKS wing distribution panels on one side are removed or installed, that's that wing weeping anti-icing system, either of the one-piece titanium leading edge sections are removed or installed, or either of the stall triggers is adjusted, replaced, overhauled, or removed, then you refer to the POH for the test procedure. Doing a stall in a swept-wing aircraft is considerably different than doing a stall in a straight-winged aircraft like we're used to in general aviation. If you get into a deep stall with one of these aircraft, it can take tens of thousands of feet to recover. If you begin to start to spin this aircraft, you are entering test pilot territory. That's why in the airlines, we only practice stalls in the simulator. But sometimes there are maintenance requirements that require you to test the actual jet in some of these business jet applications. And here's an example of a stall test in a Hawker 900 XP. First off, take a look at the mountains out here in the distance of the window. We raised the nose up to slow the aircraft down. They're noting the speeds. There's the stall shaker, which is shaking the stick because there's no natural stall buffet in this aircraft. There it is. And the stick pusher. Bank angle. Bank angle. Bank angle. And there goes a secondary stall right there. And look at that rate of descent. Now look at the loss of altitude. Now there's some very specific guidance in the Hawker manual before performing a stall in one of these aircraft. One, you got to have at least 10,000 feet above the ground, which these guys did. They were at 20,000 feet. Minus 5 is 15,000 feet above the ground. But they also got to be clear of the clouds. Stalls must be conducted during day VMC with a good visual horizon. The autopilot must be disengaged. The stall identification system must be operational. All the external surfaces must be free from ice, and this is proven from some previous crash examples. The ventral fuel tank must be empty, and the weather radar must be in standby. You can have the stall damper on or off. The reason it's so important that you stay in VMC conditions and clear the clouds is that this maneuver can be very disorienting, and if you get into the stall in the clouds, you may very well blow the stall recovery procedure through disorientation and really develop into a spin much easier. And here's the techniques they want you to use to do the stall test. Technique for stalls. The stalling technique is as follows. Number 1, all stalls are to be made in straight and level, wings level flight. Number 2, stalls with flaps retracted and in the takeoff configuration should be carried out at idle thrust. To reduce altitude loss with approach or landing flap stalls, thrust should be adjusted not to exceed 77% N1. Once thrust is set, it should not be reduced during the approach to stall and recovery. During these high angles of attack, you don't want to be jockeying the throttles around so much that you might possibly compressor stall these engines. The airplane should be trimmed at an airspeed of approximately 1.4 VS1 in the appropriate configuration. The airspeed should be reduced not more than 1 knot per second. You want to ease into this thing. Rapid or violent movement of any control during the approach to stall should be avoided because you'll aggravate the stall and potentially spin the aircraft, particularly at airspeeds below the operation of the stick shaker. With the yaw damper off, any tendency to yaw during the approach to stall should be corrected by the normal use of rudder, just like any other airplane. The stall is identified by a short forward movement of the control column provided by the stall identification system. That's the stick pusher. The red stall valve open annunciators will illuminate, and the airplane should be allowed to pitch nose down until the stick push has canceled and should then be recovered to normal controlled flight. Any tendency to roll should be corrected by the use of ailerons. Do not attempt to hold the aircraft in a stall. Yeah, if you begin to pull too soon, it takes these swept wing aircraft a long time to get that airflow reattached to the wings, and you are still very close to a stall even though you're heading straight down. Remember, an aircraft can stall at any attitude or any indicated airspeed, but only one critical angle of attack. Even though the nose is headed straight down and the speed is building, if you pull that stick back too quick, it'll enter that secondary stall. Get right back in it. Now here's some very interesting parameters from right out of the manual of what constitutes a successful stall test. A frequent reason for unacceptable stall characteristics is a tendency to roll at stall. It's acceptable for a moderate roll to occur provided that normal use of the ailerons can limit the roll angle to no more than 20 degrees. Now, normally in conventional aircraft, like the general aviation straight wing aircraft, we don't advise using ailerons at all in a stall. It just aggravates the situation and can lead to a spin. But this is different. This is swept wing stuff. This is specific to the Hawker. Aileron snatch may occur at or prior to stall and is not acceptable. The aileron snatch may be strong enough to affect recovery using aileron input, in which case the elevator control must be moved forward to decrease the angle of attack and allow a return to the normal aileron control. In such an event, the pilot must be prepared to recover from an unusual attitude. Now that's something I'm not familiar with, and I've certainly never flown the Hawker 900, but this aileron snatch, it sounds like the ailerons can go right to a full stop condition during this test if it's an unsuccessful test. Pilots conducting stall checks should have, this is a big one, pilots conducting stall checks should have prior experience in performing stalls in the Hawker and must be prepared for unacceptable stall behavior at any point leading up to and throughout the maneuver. This sounds to me basically like test pilot stuff. You would not get me to do a stall test in a Hawker. It's just a regular part of my job, unless I was a dang test pilot. This just sounds too sketchy to me to be doing this on a regular schedule without proper training or experience. Two more very interesting points about this particular design. I mentioned earlier briefly, because of the high T-tail design, there is no natural stall warning or aerodynamic buffet prior to the stall, because the stall buffeting from the wings is cleared by the high T-tail. Stall warning is provided by a stick shaker, which is set to operate at an indicated airspeed of 7 to 9% above the stall speed. So investigators will be able to quickly and easily determine what the nature of this flight was and what the nature of any maintenance that was done on this aircraft prior to this flight. One of the concerns I have are these clouds here shown over the accident site. Were they in compliance with all of the notes, warnings, and cautions in the pilot operating handbook prior to doing the stall series? Did they have the proper experience before they did this stall series? But something went terribly wrong during the stall test and drove this aircraft nearly straight into the ground. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.